I am very excited for June. Whatever else happens, whatever goes wrong in my life in June, I have this stack of amazing books to read. Honestly, looking at this stack, this is the most excited I've ever been for a month of focused reading in my entire life. And this is kind of weird, right? Every single month, every week, every day, you can pick what you want to read. We have free will. At any given moment, you can construct a nice stack of books that you're excited to read, all of which look like absolute bangers. But that doesn't always happen. This month, it's happened. Every single one of these books is going to be great. I am sure of it. Let's see if I can keep this energy level going. These are the 11 books I'm very, very excited to read in June. We'll start with the review copies. Check this out. Earlier this year, I'm talking like 2 months ago, we got a new Adrian Tchaikovsky book, Alien Clay. Adrian Tchaikovsky is, well, alongside Becky Chambers and John Scalzi, my favorite sci-fi author. I'm a big sci-fi fan and those are my three. So a new Tchaikovsky book was cause for celebration and Alien Clay was amazing. I went to a talk here in Glasgow and got that signed. Tchaikovsky is the nicest, sweetest man in the entire world. And somehow we have another one? According to what I've read, Adrian Tchaikovsky spent like 15 years of his adult life working a normal 9-to-5 job and trying to get published. And when he finally managed it, he kicked it into overdrive and has spent the last 10 plus years churning out so many great sci-fi and fantasy books. And this year, we got Alien Clay and this Service Model. Alien Clay was a really serious, very, very clever, incredible piece of political world building. I lapped every page up. Service Model has a very different tone, very different energy. Let me read you the blurb. Meet Charles, TM, the latest in robot servant technology, programmed to undertake the most menial household chores. Charles is loyal, efficient, and logical to a fault. That is, until a rather large fault causes him to murder his owner. Understandably perplexed, Charles finds himself without a master, and therefore worthless in a society utterly reliant on artificial labour and services. Fleeing the household, he enters a wider world he never knew existed. Here, an age-old human hierarchy is disintegrating into ruins, and an entire robot ecosystem devoted to its well-being is struggling to find a purpose. Oh, I cannot wait. I got this as a review copy. It is a finished hardcover. Thank you so much to Tor, the publisher, for sending me this. Like, what a treat. I get a lot of review copies. I love all of them and I'm always grateful, but this is a finished hardback. Oh, I can't wait. Service Model, by the way, comes out really, really soon, at least here in the UK, and I'll be reviewing it in a few episodes' time. And immediately after that, I'll be reading and reviewing this, the new Paul Tremblay horror novel. Tremblay is one of the big names in horror fiction. The Cabin at the End of the World, A Head Full of Ghosts, these are iconic horror novels at this point. I love his work and we finally have this. This is also a lovely review copy. I also love a horror novel being called horror movie. That's great. Let's read the blurb. Summer 1993. A group of young guerrilla filmmakers spend 4 weeks making Horror Movie, a notorious, disturbing art house horror film. Steeped in mystery and tragedy, the film has taken on a mythic, cult renown, despite only 3 of the original scenes ever being released to the public. Decades later, a big-budget reboot is in the works, and Hollywood turns to the only surviving cast member, the man who played the Thin Kid, the masked teen at the center of it all. He remembers all too well the secrets buried within the original screenplay, the bizarre events of the filming, and the crossed lines on set. Caught in a nightmare of masks and appearances, facile Hollywood personalities, and the strangeness of fan conventions, the Thin Kid spins a tale of past and present, scripts and reality, and what the camera lets us see. But at what cost do we revisit our demons? Yes! Yes! A new Adrian Tchaikovsky sci-fi book, a new Paul Tremblay horror book. This is how my month begins. I'm thrilled. Then we get to the awkward one, the elephant in the room, kind of. I received this review copy at some point a few months ago. Maclehose Press sent it to me, I put it on my shelf with all my other review copies, and for some reason I thought this book came out in like August. Turns out it came out in May and I just didn't read and review it. This is A Perfect Day to Be Alone by Japanese author Nanae Aoyama. It was translated by Jesse Kirkwood, who also this year translated The No Mask Murder, a book I read and reviewed last month. So Jesse's been busy. This is a very thin little thing, and I read and review every single Japanese novel that comes my way, so I'm very, very excited to read and review this. And the blurb just says, "It was raining when I arrived at the house. The walls of my room were lined with cat photos, set in fancy frames just below the ceiling. I didn't feel like counting them. Some were black and white, and others colour. The whole room had the austere atmosphere of a family altar. I just stood there in the doorway." That's all I get from this review copy. I don't know what this is about, but I love thin, beautiful novellas. I love Japanese fiction. A lot of Japanese books are novellas, and I'm sure this is going to be a lot of fun. I don't think I've ever read this author before, but I have high hopes. And my last review copy of June is this. Flowers from the Void by Gianni Washington. This was sent to me by Serpent's Tail. This is also a gorgeous finished hardcover, and it's a collection of gothic horror tales. These are stories about ghosts, witchcraft, surreal encounters, and they're also stories about race. That's all I know. But the blurb is covered in lovely accolades by great authors. Lucy McKnight Hardy, Irena Sinakogie, Nadia Atia, great names. In fact, speaking of, if you haven't read Irena Sinakogie's short story collection Nudibranch, it is a wild and wonderful time. I actually went to the launch of that book back in like 2019. She's wonderful, and I'm sure this will be too. Eagle-eyed viewers of this channel might recognize this novel from the video I did last month about what I was going to read in May. I didn't read it because in that video I said I was excited to go to the cinema and watch the film adaptation of this book, directed by M. Night Shyamalan's daughter. Film didn't come out in May, it comes out in June, a few days from now. I'm going to go watch it, I'm going to read the book, and I'm going to make a video comparing them. That's actually going to happen this month. I could have avoided all of that if I just checked when it was coming out, but I didn't, did I? I got excited, and the consequences of that are literally nothing, so I don't know why I'm annoyed. Anyway, I actually will be reading this month, and I keep thinking about doing more film content on this channel, so I'm going to compare this to the film and see how that goes. Occasionally I pop to the big bookshop in the centre of Glasgow, the big Waterstones on Sauchiehall Street, and whenever I go in there, I look for this book. I've been doing it for like 3 months. The Waterstones app says it's in stock at that shop. I go in, I can't find it anywhere. And I don't want to ask the staff there because it's a really big shop and I feel bad. So I've been eager to pick this book up for fucking ages. I went into the giant bookshop on Sauchiehall Street the other day and I asked someone to help me and she found the bloody book. So thank you, bookseller. Booksellers are great. Love them. Anyway, this is Just Like Home by Sarah Gailey. I really, really like the works of Sarah Gailey, and I don't often hear other people talking about how great they are. A while ago, I was writing freelance for a small online publication, and I was given a review copy of The Echo Wife, a sci-fi novel by Sarah Gailey. I really enjoyed that book, and ever since then, I've wanted to read more of their stuff. Well, this is a gothic horror thriller thingy. It's about a woman who returns to her childhood home where her father, a serial killer, used to live. And while she's at that house, she starts receiving notes. Sounds weird, sounds fun. I have a lot of faith in Sarah Gailey to always write original and exciting stuff. And I've had my eye on this for months. I finally got it. I'm finally gonna read it. And I'm gonna have a really good time. Sarah Gailey is wonderful. I am absolutely buzzing about this one, honestly. This is The Puzzlewood by Rosie Andrews. A few months ago, I told myself to slow down on the book buying, to use my library more often, and I have been doing that. But in May, I went a little crazy. I had a few low days, and on low days, I pick myself up by buying a book. I went into a shop, I found this, I got really, really excited, and I immediately bought it. Just behind me here is Rosie Andrews' debut novel, The Leviathan. I loved The Leviathan so much. I'm not sure I ever made a video about it. It came out like 2 years ago, and oh, what a wonderful, wonderful piece of gothic historical fiction. What I loved so much about The Leviathan was how utterly camp it was. There was pageantry to that novel. It was ludicrously over the top in its writing and its events. You know when you read Frankenstein or any other old Gothic novel and the language is so flamboyant, so over the top, so camp, there's a real theatricality to the language. The Leviathan had all of that, while also having monsters and betrayal and strange twists. Oh God, I love that book. And now we have her second novel. And it's set in the place I grew up, which actually is kind of triggering for me, I guess. I don't like my hometown, I don't like going back there, but it is a really beautiful part of England. The titular Puzzlewood is actually an ancient piece of forest in England, one of the oldest forests in Europe, and it's often used by Hollywood to film scenes in certain movies. If you go back and watch Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens, there's a fight scene between Rey and Kylo Ren in a forest. That was Puzzlewood. Adam Driver went to my hometown and filmed a fight scene in Puzzlewood. That's pretty cool. I've been to Puzzlewood myself, it's a gorgeous place, and it's really cool that there's a novel set there by one of my new favourite authors. And it's also a gothic horror story about a governess in an old house. Very turn of the screw, very quintessentially gothic, and I'm really, really excited. I can't tell you how hyped I am for this book. I will be doing a video and I will be screaming about it, I'm sure. This is a sci-fi novel that's been on my radar for quite a while now. And on a whim, I decided to pick it up because people really go crazy over it. If you're a sci-fi fan, you probably recognize this, you probably read it, and you probably loved it. This is The Vanished Birds by Simon Jimenez. As far as I know, it was his debut novel. And oh, the lovely things people say about this spacefaring sci-fi epic. It's a standalone novel, which I'm very happy about. I'm getting very, very sick of science fiction copying fantasy and doing long, long series, big trilogies, whatever. I love a good standalone. And this is, as far as I know. I don't know much about it. I'm in a sci-fi mood right now, and I want to make sure I read all the really big stuff, the stuff that people go crazy over. I recently discovered the works of John Scalzi. I'm thrilled about the fact that we've got 2 Adrian Tchaikovsky books this year, and so why wouldn't I pick up one of the most critically and commercially acclaimed sci-fi novels of the past few years? Let's dig into it, let's check it out. I'm very, very excited. And here's a book that kind of flew under my radar. It came out very recently, and then I started paying attention. This is Fragile Animals by Genevieve Jagger. It was recently published by small indie publisher 404 Inc., who put out incredible stuff. If you're in the UK, go right now to 404 Inc.'s website or their social media pages. The stuff they put out is so great. They have this series of non-fiction pamphlet books. They call them Inklings, and a lot of great writers have written a lot of great little inklings about interesting niche topics that they find fascinating. I've read quite a few of them, including one about the queer paradise that is Schitt's Creek. Inklings are great, but 404 also put out really, really good, daring, dark, strange things, and this is one of them. Fragile Animals is a Scottish Gothic story about religion and vampires. Let me read you the blurb. When an ex-Catholic woman develops a sexual relationship with a vampire, she is forced to confront the memories that haunt her religious past. Struggling to deal with the familial trauma of her Catholic upbringing, hotel cleaner Noelle travels from Edinburgh to the Isle of Bute. There she meets a man who claims to be a vampire, and a relationship blooms between them based solely on confession. But as talks grow sacrilegious and the weather outside grows colder, Noelle becomes hounded by memories of her past, her blasphemous sexuality, and the love she lost while stuck in the closet, of her mother's affair with the local priest, and the part she played in ending it. It's queer, it's about vampires, it's about religious trauma, and apparently it is written with absolute poetic sensibilities. I am thrilled, I am pumped to read something this fun. And it's Scottish. I live in Scotland, and I love it. Another modern sci-fi book that was hugely well received, that fans go crazy over, but I hadn't read, is Ninefox Gambit by Yoon-Ha Lee. I'm very guilty about this fact, but I have owned this Yoon-Ha Lee book for ages. I picked this up when it was in hardback. It's been out in paperback for like 2 years, and I've never read it. I picked it up because Yoon-Ha Lee is a trans guy, and the protagonist of this fantasy novel is non-binary, and I was like, wow, finally, that's really cool. A fresh, exciting fantasy novel about a non-binary character by a trans author. Awesome, can't wait. But I haven't been in a fantasy mood in literally years. So this has sat on my TBR for longer than I care to admit. But because I'm in an enormous sci-fi mood right now, and I really want to read Yoon-Ha Lee, I decided to check out Ninefox Gambit. So I'm gonna read this month. I'm sure I'm gonna absolutely love it. And then I'll finally read Phoenix Extravagant, maybe next month. That's my plan right now, to to finally fall into the works of Yoon-Ha Lee, starting with a sci-fi novel and then moving into fantasy. I really struggle with fantasy these days, and I don't want to. I want to read the good stuff. So we'll start here and we'll move on from there. And finally, the last book I'm planning to read in June is a Grady Hendrix novel. One I've never read before. I'm a huge Grady Hendrix fan. How to Sell a Haunted House, which is somewhere behind me, is currently my favourite of his books. I thought My Best Friend's Exorcism was good, but not great. But The Final Girl Support Group was absolutely wonderful, and How to Sell a Haunted House is his best yet, in my opinion. But fellow fans of Grady Hendrix often say that this is his best work. This and Horror Store, which I also haven't read. Now, the thing about this book and Horror Store is neither of them have a UK publisher, so you have to keep your eyes peeled. You're not going to find these in libraries, and occasionally you'll walk into a bookshop and they'll be on the shelves. I don't know why there's no UK publisher for this and Horror Store, but it does also mean they're slightly more expensive than they should be. Whatever the case, I'm very excited to finally read the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. I read Hendrix's introduction to this as soon as I picked it up, and it's kind of a pseudo-sequel to My Best Friend's Exorcism. That was about a group of teenage girls in a small suburban town in the 80s, and this is about their parents. It's not an official sequel, you don't have to read one then the other, they just share some characters, that's it. But I do think that's really cool. And he said that he was inspired by his own mother. I've talked before about how Grady Hendrix writes women really well. He is a male horror author who writes fantastic female protagonists. Like, truly. I don't mean to sound patronizing, but his female protagonists, they really are great women. And it makes me think he must have a very healthy relationship with his mum, especially to say that she inspired the characters in this book. So I'm really excited. I'm also currently rewatching Buffy, one of my favourite TV shows in the whole wide world. I'm having a blast revisiting Buffy, and so it's put me in the mood to read this. And I think now you can see why I am so excited by this month. Every single book on this stack feels like a complete banger. This is going to be really fun. I keep staring at the stack over there. It's teasing me. I'm going to start reading Service Model today, and then just go through the stack, probably in the order I mentioned them in this video. It's gonna be a really good month. If you enjoyed this, if you enjoyed my energy, if you want to keep me around on YouTube and you love my videos, please consider supporting me on Patreon. At this point, my career, my job is entirely funded by my Patreon community. This is my dream job. I love doing it. I'm really good at it, and I would really appreciate your support. I am now a grassroots, completely community-funded content creator. It's cool, it's scary, but I love my Patreon community, and if you'd like to support me, please consider doing so. Even $1 a month goes an enormous long way for someone like me. And if you're not able to dedicate a certain amount of money each month to my Patreon, I completely understand, but you can also hit the super thanks button under this video and just leave me a tip. That is just as much appreciated. Thank you in advance, and subscribe for books.